Hey, and welcome back to my podcast, No Bullshit with Joe. Thank you for being here. And today I want to get straight into it. I want to talk about the Human Rights Act 1998. Actually, while I'm on the topic and something's just popped into my head, I want to discuss that as well. Last night, my wife sent me a TikTok video of a woman who basically sends her daughter to a private school in the UK, whereas she has friends who send their daughters or sons to state schools, obviously because of the financial, not having the finances to send them to private schools, which is totally cool. However, what this woman said was that it was phenomenal that her 5-year-old and 6-year-old, 5 to 6-year-old, when she went to the private school, she was taught straight away, immediately. She was asked to take £1 to school, okay? And so the woman gave her £1 and she went to school. And her daughter, her 5 to 6-year-old, was taught how to invest that £1, what ideas they could do to create more financial gain. That isn't taught in state schools. That is not taught in state schools in the UK. That's not right, because it doesn't matter. Money's going to money. So if you've got money to invest in a private school, your daughters and sons will get taught about how to make money. If you've not got money and you go to a state school, then they won't get taught about money. They won't get taught about how to invest. I didn't know, I've had to self-teach myself how investments work, how stocks and shares work, what cryptocurrencies are, whether you are to or not to invest into them. So, getting back to the human rights, a right to education, which is one of our human rights here, is a right to an education. The class difference between a private school and a state-funded school is absolutely phenomenal. And, I think it's wrong. But that's me. Anyway, so let's start talking about the Human Rights Act. So we have a right to life, which is fine. We have a right not to be tortured or treated in an inhuman or degrading way. These are, by the way, from the website freedomfromtorture.org. We have a right to be free from slavery and forced labour. We have a right to liberty and safety. We have a right to a fair trial. I don't think that always happens, does it, with our corrupt court systems? I mean, let's talk about that one for a second. A right to a fair trial. My mum was murdered in cold blood. My dad got 2.5 years in prison. Yet I read an article the other day about a mum who had gone to work because one of her kids was ill. Wasn't ill, but she was ill. So she had left her oldest kid in charge, looking after the other 3. One of them had left the house and ended up at the neighbour's house. The neighbour then called the police because he'd gone to his mate's house. I think he was about 7 or 8. The kid that was left in charge was about 14 or 15. Had gone to his mate's house. The mate had rung the police to dob the other mum in. And the single mum, and she's a single mum, by the way, so she's trying to do all this on her own, could now be facing a year in prison. I remember when I was a kid, I was left at home alone when I was 13, 14, 15. I was left at home alone looking after a fucking farm. So, what? Why? Right to a fair trial. While this woman's facing a year in prison for something that was practically unavoidable, if she's got no support system and stuff like that, whereas someone who's murdered someone gets 2.5 years. Something's not right to me. Something doesn't add up. So, right to not be punished for. I didn't finish that one off. Right to not be punished for something that wasn't against the law when you did it. So, if you did something that was against the law, but the law hadn't come into place yet, you have a right not to be locked up for it, basically. Right to freedom of expression. Well, we've not really got that, have we? Let's be honest. UK. Right to freedom of expression. All my videos on TikTok, and it's not hate speech, or what would be classed as hate speech, but even hate speech is freedom of expression if we really look at it and think about it on a philosophical level. We have a right I have a right to express myself. Yeah, I've had 4 or 5 videos with community guidelines taken away from them because I dare mention the name Boris Johnson or COVID or something along the lines of that. So, right to freedom of expression. We've not got that right. We're not allowed to freely express ourselves. I'm sorry, but we have all these social media platforms and we're not. Look at what's going on in the world right now. Look at what's going on. You say, right, it says, oh, right to freedom of expression. But if I was to say, for argument's sake, let me think, I can't think of a good example. So if I was to say that I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we have a multitude of genders when there's only a man or a woman. Now, I did training on that at my work the other day. Our words are being adjusted. Our speech is being controlled. Now, the training that I did it on the other day at work was, it basically said, you know, we're not meant to say Merry Christmas anymore. We have to say, what was it? We have to say Happy Holidays. So I had to fill in these little boxes where you had, I've not said where I work here, by the way, but you had to fill in these little boxes where you had, and this isn't a place, I don't work in care anymore. I don't work in anywhere like that, but our speech is still being monitored. So you have to say, you had to get these little boxes, and it said, instead of saying Merry Christmas, you can say, and you had choices. And I had to put in the box, Happy Holidays, or da-da-da-da-da, or da-da-da. That's not freedom. That's not, which one am I talking about? That's not freedom of expression. That's not freedom of expression at all, because you're being told what to say. And that's nothing against work. They're following the government guidelines and they're following other people's guidelines. So I understand it, but I explicitly don't agree with it, which is, you know, I have a right to say because I have a freedom of expression under my Human Rights Act, which shouldn't be punished for. You know, just as someone has the right to say to me, I think there's 76 genders, I have a right to say I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Just as someone, you know, so no, our freedom of expression isn't being accepted because we're being dictated to what we can and can't say. Right to freedom of thoughts, belief and religion. If you've read 1988, they have the thought police in that book, 1988. Well, look at what's going on. We literally have the thought police. You can't think or say or do without having police knocking on your door nowadays. People are monitoring your social medias. They're monitoring your speech. They're monitoring you. I had 5 videos on TikTok taken down because I'd opposed the government. But I have freedom of thought, of belief and religion. I don't believe that the government is substantial. I don't believe that Boris Johnson is a substantial Prime Minister. My human rights says I have a right to that freedom of thought. I have a right to that freedom of expression. I'm expressing myself. I have a right to that belief. My belief is that. I also have a right to say no, that I don't agree with religion. I also have a right to say that I am religious. Anyway, let's get to the next one. Right to not be discriminated against in relation to any rights and or freedoms listed here. Right, so my freedom of expression and my freedom of thought and my freedom of belief is that COVID vaccines shouldn't be forced upon people in place for them. This is my freedom of expression. COVID vaccines shouldn't be forced upon people for them to keep their jobs or for them to not keep their jobs. I think that is inherently wrong for you to say you have to have this jab or you lose your job. That's my freedom of expression. But guaranteed, there'll be backlash off that. So again, I'm being discriminated against. So I've left my old job, right? Because I knew I was going to be sacked if I didn't leave. And I was being discriminated against in relation to any rights and freedoms listed here. And so were all the other people working in care. And so were all the other people working at the nurses and the nurses and the doctors. All them other people, right to not be discriminated against in relation to any rights and freedoms listed here. Right, so all them, right to freedom of expression, right to freedom of thoughts, right to freedom of belief, you're being discriminated against. The government is discriminating against you and it's breaking its own human rights acts. Right to peaceful enjoyment of possessions. It's one of them things. That's why we have the police. Right to education. Again, let's get back onto what I was saying before. Yes, we do have the right to education, but the education class is so different. It's phenomenal. That needs to be brought together. So people like me, you know, I've self-taught, and I'll pass on that knowledge stuff that I've taught myself to my children. There's lots of information on the internet that you can find, and if you invest the time in the right areas, then what you will do is you can educate yourself. But that's not the in finances and stuff like that. But that's not the point. You know, the point of the matter is you should be taught about that, and then your decisions are then yours, and yours alone to make. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say about the Human Rights Act. And also, I had a very interesting conversation the other week. I say the other week, it was over a month ago. It's about 2 months ago, when I was working with an old colleague of mine, and we were talking about human rights. And he came up with a very, very, very interesting, his name's Richard, and he came up with a very, very interesting concept. And he said, my argument about the Human Rights Act is, who has the right to sit down and write down what my human rights are? Think about that for a minute. Who has the right to sit down and write down and decide for me what my human rights are? Yes, they are there to protect you, but if you think about it, that is an interesting concept. That is a really thought-provoking and interesting thing to think about. The other thing is, not only are our human rights worldwide being violated substantially, the government does, I believe, have the power to change the human rights law. So if the government has the power to change your human rights law, then wow, Richard is absolutely pretty much bang on in what he's saying. Because if they can change that law, that was brought in 1998. If he can change, according to the internet, but if he can change that law, the government, they're already breaking their own laws. They're already breaking their own rules. They're already breaking all the rules here, or 50% of them, due to forcing people out of jobs, due to coercion and bullying, manipulation. People are so blind to it. They're so blind to it. It's not about whether, I'm not even discussing about the side effects of the jab at the moment. I'm not even talking about that. What I'm talking about is the human right to freedom of expression. My choice is to not have the jab, and that should be accepted. I shouldn't be punished for that, and neither should other people. This government is, the world at the moment is absolutely phenomenal. Our human rights, and again, we're not educated on this because in primary school, in secondary school, in state schools, you're not taught about your human rights. You're not shown what your human rights are. They're not explained to you. Because applied knowledge is power. If you apply the knowledge that you have, then it gives you power. If they don't give you that knowledge in the first place, you can't apply it. Therefore, you have no power. So what is the point? To keep the poor poor and to keep the rich rich. Money goes to money. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, I am in the process of hopefully creating my own little kingdom, creating my own little financial being by talking about finances and talking about my thoughts and stuff like that and getting out there. Anyway, that's my rant for today. So, yeah, look up the Freedom Rights Act, people. Have a think about it, because they are being violated completely by our own governments who are meant to be protecting us. Look at Austria. Look at Canada. Canada, the truckers. Let's talk about them for a second. They are expressing themselves. They have a right to express themselves. But look what he's looking to do. Take away their bank accounts. That's not his money to take away. That's not his money to close down their bank accounts. He took away £9 million from GoFundMe. GoFundMe was completely wrong to hand it over. And that's the platform that I will never use. If I ever do a funding campaign, I'll use somewhere different. And I think a hell of a lot of people will do so as well. Because, like, there's a CEO, it's a different GoFundMe page, but I'm sure there was a CEO that came out and said, very similar to GoFundMe, the company, but a different one, that no matter what the government says, they don't follow their rules and regulations. If somebody has created not a GoFundMe, but a GoFund account with this other company, then that money will go to what it's been designed to go to and what it's been designed to go to. So that's it. Over and out for today, peeps. Please don't forget to check out my LinkedIn. If you're watching this on Facebook, I still do look like Boris Johnson. I will have a shave at some point when my leg's better and I can get to the barber. So don't forget to check out my LinkedIn. There is a shop on there for my podcast, No Bullshit with Joe. You can go and look at the eToro account. Again, gives you investment opportunities to invest in the stock market. It gives you opportunities to invest in cryptocurrency if you so wish. But you are doing it at your own risk. And it is your own decision to make. Also, I have to inform you that if you do click on it, I have teamed up with eToro. So if you do click on it, I do get paid for you clicking on that link and investing £100 into your platform to create a financial income for yourself. Stocks and shares do go up and down. Dividends, they do pay on a regular basis, depending on who you go with. I think Coca-Cola pays every 3 months or something like that, a certain percentage. I think it's 4 or 5%. I'm not 100% certain. I also have an NFT collection on there. You can also follow me on Instagram on there. I've absolutely shed loads of stuff on my Linktree account. You will be hearing from me practically every single day. I have broken my leg, so I am off ill for the next 8 weeks, peeps, so you're gonna have to put up with me. When I go back to work, you will be hearing from me at least 2 times a week. So thank you for listening. Over and out. Love to you all, and keep smiling, peeps. Keep smiling.